something about this kind of travel in Botswana that I absolutely love. You don't really need to follow a road on these pans. When the waters come, it obliterates all the tracks. The glare is unbelievable. It's something about the Botswana part of the Kalahari that is so unique. You can see a number of groups of cattle, a couple of wells. We're going to explore those now. See, there's another well over there. The women are doing that well. This is Botswana. This is a part of Botswana that time is kind of left behind. We're lucky enough also to be here with a man who has spent most of his life lecturing and writing about Botswana and the Great Kalahari, and that is Mike Main. And we're very lucky to be here.
There's life in old Botswana for you.
I know, isn't that wonderful?
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
What you're going to find, particularly with this game around the game areas, you'll find that the animals will scrape away the pan surface. Right at the deepest part of the pan, the lowest part of the pan. We're talking about marginal distance differences, a few centimeters. But there will be a point, the last place where water will lie. And that's where you'll find the game scraping at the sand with their hoofs. And you'll see a hole about this size.
Yeah.
And they eat it. They actually eat the content because it's got trace elements in it. Because this is the end point of an inland drainage system. You've got to see it that way. So this is where, if there's ever runoff, this is where it goes.
Okay.
And with the runoff goes all the trace elements, all the nutrients that dissolve in water. So this is a catchment place for all the nutrients. Hence, around a pan like this, you will find greater biodiversity than anywhere else in the Kalahari. There are more different plant species within a kilometre of this pan than there are anywhere else in the Kalahari. So that's why the game comes here, because there's the possibility of water when in the rainy season. There's the certainty of trace elements that they need, because the nutrients are not great in the grass. And finally, there's more different plants around here than anywhere else. Hence, when you go into the part of the Kalahari that we're going to go into, you see a lot of, you see quite a lot of game always around the pan. That's where you go to see game. It's easy to see them, and they're all there because there's lots of things they want. These things are incredibly important in the whole ecology of the Kalahari and its development.
Let's go and have a look and see, a little bit of a closer look.
I see they're using rimpies made, I think they call them rimpies made from the skin of cows.
Oh, the rope.
Yeah, it's not rope.
Yeah, I see that.
And they're all covered with wood like this. Is exactly the way that they've done it. How are you doing? Let's see how far that water is. I think it's about 25, 30 feet. Yeah, it's a long way down. This water's deep. But it's good metzi, hey? Slightly salty. Very slightly salty, but fine. Cattle can tolerate saltier water than we can.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why, one of the many reasons why the cattle industry has taken off so successfully in this country. They're incredibly hardy animals. They survive on anything, and slightly saline water doesn't bother them at all.
Slightly brackish.
It's a bohu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting from 19th centuries.
When did this one start?
Yeah, it's too far away from the. It's 20 meters deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you make this rope?
It make the art is the skin of the cow.
What part of the cow?
The skin.
Oh, skin. Oh, skin. I can see.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
We kill a cow.
Yeah.
After that, we take the skin and we roll it and we hang on the tree.
Okay.
After we hang, we take a quick wine.
Yeah.
You see quick wine?
Yeah.
Yeah, we roll. After that, we come and use
How long? How long do you have to wait for it to dry? How long?
It's too late. It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how Botswana was opened up, how the Kalahari was opened up. 100 years, 200 years ago, when explorers started coming to this part of Africa, it was a great thirst land, and it was a formidable barrier. There was no water, there were no roads, there was no way of getting across it. But the people were here, and the great thing is, how did the people get here? And these pans are the answer to that question. I find it absolutely fascinating. Because if you can get to a pan like this, notice all these wells around the edges. Yeah, they're all
on the edge. Are they all on the one edge?
So if you can get to a pan like this, the chances are 8 out of 10 that if you dig a hole on the edge of the pan, you'll find fresh water. This water's perfectly fresh.
All around or just on one edge?
No, well, it depends. There's no fixed rules, but you'll find water. And that means that when the first people came here, the way they got across the Kalahari was like a series of stepping stones, from one pan like this to another pan to another pan. And if you could do that, you could cross the whole so-called desert. And the trick was, how would you find a pan? And the secret, the answer to that, is these low hills here. If you could see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little summits, they happen to be on the southwest side of this pan. And the significance of that is this. We think that most of the pans in this country are what are called deflation pans. The wind blows, it hits a hollow, it accelerates as it goes across the hollow, it picks up pieces of dust, moves out of the hollow, slows down, and the dust gets dropped. So you get these sand dunes. Typically in this part of the world, you get these sand dunes formed on the side opposite to the prevailing wind. Opposite
And
wind.
we're feeling the wind now.
And we're feeling the wind
There's
now.
the
It's
wind.
coming from the northeast, so there on the southwest are these sand dunes. So what? Well, the so what of that is that if you go to the top of those sand dunes and you look, in the distance, once you get used to knowing what you're looking for, you will see other sand dunes. And they're telling you that that's another pan. And if you've got the water and the time to walk to that sand dune, near it you'll find a pan. Once you get to that pan, you can dig a hole on the edge like this, find water, and you've taken one step forward into the Kalahari. And the interesting thing is that all the major villages in the Kalahari in Botswana, even today, sit on the side of pans, because that's how they were put there in the first place. So when you see these pans here in these little hills, there's so much more to the story than just a rather beautiful feature and some odd hills on one side. They're all the same, and they all have this marvelous story. And here they are. In almost all of them, you'll find water between 20 and 40 feet below the surface. And these chaps are watering their cattle now in the same traditional way they've been doing it for 200 years or more.
The marvellous thing about travelling with Mike is that you never know what to expect next. In Botswana, there is an excellent network of tar roads between all major and many minor centres. We're on our way down south to the Molopo River and the South African border. And suddenly, Mike pulls over.
Because I have no idea what we're going to do, but I'm sure we're about to find out.
I want to show you this here. I've lost it. Where has it gone? Here, right here. You see this here? This thing here. Can you see that? It's the cocoon of a moth.
It's a cocoon of a moth.
A
you say.
cocoon of a moth. And it rejoices. Watch your head. These thorns are vicious. It rejoices in the incredibly unlikely name of Gonometica postica. What a hell of a name to carry in the Kalahari, but that's who that belongs to. It's a cocoon. And what's special about it is that You know how the pupa wraps itself in thread and fine thread,
Yes,
and
yes.
you know of silkworms
Yeah.
and how they unwind it to make silk.
Yes.
That is the source of the finest quality silk in the world.
Is it farmed at all?
No,
or is
not
it
at
just
all.
Naturally?
It's absolutely natural. We've had people come out and look at it.
Yes.
Italian, we've actually had someone who's made up and got enough of that silk to make it into material, and we've had Italian cloth makers out in this country. They've made a suit out of it, and they say it is the finest quality silk in the world. And for a long time in this country there was great excitement about gonometic or postica, that we would actually start a new industry, and no one has been able to find a way of harvesting them, getting them to breed on demand and produce thousands and thousands of these. Its Latin name is delightful. This is Acacia mellifera, and mellifera is the Greek word for honey. And when you smell these, about a week ago they were in full bloom, as it were, and there's a lovely smell of honey, and of course it makes the most delightful honey. And I just think the word mellifera, it drips with feeling, and when I think of describing that beautiful blonde who is melliferous, it's a wonderful word.
I'll remember it for Scrabble.
Acacia mellifera. We're Andrew, this is one of my favourite spots in Botswana, and it is one of the least known. This is the gorge at Kalahari, and in front of us here is the Molopo River that divides the Northern Cape over there from Botswana here. And what's fascinating for me is not only the incongruousness of this, because we've been driving for hours through Kalahari sand with sand dunes all around us, and suddenly we come into this huge rocky area. So that in itself is a surprise. This is a basalt dike. It's a piece of lava, if you like, that's been thrust up from deep in the earth, and it's broken the surface, and it lies across this river, and the river therefore flows across it and has been breaking it up, and later on cascades through it. Of course, another oddity is that there's no water in this river, and there hasn't been for decades. In fact, I can't think of any report of water in the Molopo in recent times. But for all that, this scene around us here demonstrates something for me which is so typical of the Kalahari. It seems so monotonous, so uninteresting, but if you look, there are all sorts of stories to tell. And if you look right down at our feet here at these rocks, you'll see that all the rocks around us, even though they're meters above the river and probably 200 meters from it, are all worn smooth.
Yeah.
And it's easy to realize that at one stage, this dry riverbed through which dust devils blow and dust comes up everywhere was once a massive river, and you have to think about elephant and game and pools of water and banks of reed right where we're sitting. And that's just, to me, so typical of the Kalahari. The story is there to see if only you look.
Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Because the Kalahari is synonymous with having no rocks.
Yeah,
Virtually
yeah,
no
absolutely.
rocks.
You can never find a stone to make a fire
Or
with.
throw out of a boon.
And here you are, and there are places like this where this basalt comes through the sand and changes the landscape completely and makes it so dramatic. And here we've got sand cascading down behind us into the riverbed, and rocks everywhere for you to see, and all of them saying how they once were underwater and were worn smooth by passing floods.
Leaving the border, we hit an infamous road surface called Kalahari.
This kind of road is so typical of the Kalahari. So often they're wide, they're flat, and they're quite tricky because they're a mixture of firm and soft surfaces. You'll get a firm piece followed immediately by a piece of very soft sand, and they come up very quickly. They're often a surprise to the driver. Now, the worst thing you can do in such a situation is to brake hard, because they're normally a dip and you crash into the dip. If your brakes are on, the nose will be dropped, you'll have less travel on your front suspension, and you potentially can do a lot of damage. The idea is, if you want to slow down rapidly, apply brake and then take it off before you hit the ditch. The nose of the vehicle will lift up and you'll have much more of the suspension to give as you go into the dip. Another dangerous thing is to swerve. Most rollover accidents happen on these roads because of the driver seeing this ditch and swerving, and the vehicle then hits it at a slight angle. And because it's soft material followed by hard material followed by soft material, as the wheels hit the soft material, it grabs them, and if the vehicle is even moving sideways slightly, it will roll onto its roof, go straight into the ditch. Okay, and be very gentle with the steering once you're in the soft bit. The best thing then is, once you're in the soft bit, take your foot off the accelerator, regain control of the vehicle, and then pull out of it. The other danger on these calcrete roads, calcrete is the white, almost concrete-like material they use to make the roads. The dust from oncoming trucks can often hide an overtaking vehicle. When you see a truck, don't be brave and whiz by. Slow right down, pull right over, be patient, let him come past, and then when the dust clears a bit, be on your way. And most of all, take it easy, take your time. Try and give yourself lots of time to get from one place to another. If you race on these roads, you damage your vehicle, and it can be quite dangerous driving. So give yourself a lot of time. Your average speed on an average calcrete road will be 70 kilometers an hour. Don't expect to do 90 or 100. You won't do it.
From the Malopo, we travel west into the sparsely populated dune country of southern Botswana, known to some as the Red Kalahari. In this part of the Kalahari, cattle roam vast areas of grassland. Driving is mostly over bone-rattling sand tracks. In some areas, driving can be rather sedentary, and in others, things hot up nicely.
No, it's not right, it's left. So you turned left, then you went up over the top, and then down quite a steep piece and turned. And as we were going down that steep piece, the back just rolled away.
Like that.
We were doing nothing, we were just innocent, driving along straight.
I'd rather go.
That's going to
Getting
be
up there is going to be a little more difficult than
much
coming
more
down.
difficult, yeah. Well, I'm sure there's going to be more of those. This is the area. Yeah.
Straight down.
I believe so.
Vertical right there.
Oh, wow.
But that's quite a sight, eh? Can a car go down there?
Yeah. how soft it is at the least, on the top of the leaf.
Oh, I'm sure,
Look at that.
So what's the trick is to keep the car straight as possible and just drop.
And accelerate down it. Push the car down the hill.
Yeah.
Because you don't want the sand underneath the wheels to roll down faster than the car, because that'll make it break down. But I'm not going down.
No.
Because getting out the other side is the problem.
Probably why
Let's have a look from the top here and see what the view is like on the other side. Remember we were talking about pans and how pans form, and we're also talking about the wind and the sand dunes, and the fact that these dunes that we see around us now, these gorgeous red dunes, are mostly that colour because the vegetation has been taken off them by cattle and goats and things, and therefore they become very mobile. What's the connection with the pans? Well, we were talking about how the wind gets into hollows and lifts sand grains up and then drops them. If you look at this tree, it's a really interesting example. When you first look at it, you think, oh, it's an odd-shaped tree with some funny buttresses. But when you look at it carefully, and I think the original ground level used to be right up here, and that this is not a fallen branch. If you look at it carefully, there's nothing to say that it's broken. In fact, it grows down here. This is a root that has become exposed. This is another root. And if you come around this side of the tree, I think that this is also a root. And what you're looking at is an original ground level here indicated by this broken branch. Compare it to the slope behind us, and all this sand has been excavated, and the roots that were here all the time have been exposed. So if you look here, you can see this line here. I think this is the original level of the sand.
Yeah.
And then gradually the wind has blown it all away, and all of the parts below this line were roots and are now exposed. And as you said, they've had to had to learn how to cover themselves and protect themselves with bark.
And now looking at it, it's actually quite obvious.
Yeah, it is.
But
Isn't that so often the case?
Absolutely, yeah. Who would have thought?
And I think one day this tree will grow over, because if the sand continues to move like this, the roots won't be able to hold it.
If it erodes faster than it can cope,
Yep,
it will fall.
it will go.
The beauty of Kalahari travel is that in many parts, including this one, you can camp anywhere. Just find a tree and go and park under it. Once settled and quiet, the desert sounds surround you. Familiar to many a Kalahari traveller are these little guys. The barking gecko. Very difficult to find, I decide to go in search of one. My efforts are rewarded.
It's hollowed out into half or two,
Have a look at that.
into a semicircle.
Okay.
And they call into the semicircle, and they do it deliberately. And the effect is ventriloquism. So it's very, very difficult to tell where the sound is coming from, because it bounces all the way off these things.
That explains a lot. I've often chased them and never ever...
Yeah, they're very hard to find.
Early the following morning, we head toward one of the most remote cattle posts in the area.
Most exciting part about exploring any wilderness area is finally arriving at a destination on a map which, until you arrive, is just a name. This is Mara. On the map it's a dot, a little track running to it, and a name which means nothing until you arrive here. All this place is, and it could have been a town looking at the map, it could have been a settlement, could have been many things, all it is a centre where water is pulled from the ground and where the cattle come down off the dunes each day and water themselves.
This is the Kalahari, seen as very few see it. In this truly biblical scene, local cattle herders bring their herds to the only borehole in 100 square miles.
Thing about a place like this, what's really striking is the complete absence of any vegetation. And you look at this and you say, ah, this is a real desert. And it's important to realize that a good third of Botswana is like this, except that there aren't this density of cattle and sheep. And it's the cattle and the sheep and the goats that eat away the vegetation, that expose the sand, that makes the sand dunes mobile, just as you see around us now. This is not the way they naturally are. They're like this because the vegetation has been eaten away. And you can always tell when you're getting near a village in the Kalahari, because suddenly bare sand starts appearing and there's only trees, there's no grass at all. It's all eaten because of the concentration of animals around the water, exactly as you have here. I mean, that's quite a sight, isn't it? I mean, look, for all the world, you could be in a real desert. It isn't at all. It's precisely defined with a perimeter of cows or calves. One there, one there, one over there, one over there. There never seems to be one cow too many for the shade. All right. You were going to say something.
We stopped underneath these trees here for a break, and we had a little surprise, didn't we? Well, it wasn't a surprise to you, it was a surprise to me.
Well, I don't know about that, but we saw something that we probably weren't expecting, and I think it's worth highlighting this because in this hot environment, everything living seeks shade, including us. And people often will stop underneath a tree just like this, and if you look around, there are thousands of them, and they'll rest and have lunch, or sometimes even camp. And there's a problem with doing that because there is a species of tick in this part of the world. It's not endemic, it's come in from another part of the world. I can't actually remember where it's come from, but it doesn't belong in southern Africa. It was introduced in the late 19th century. It's called a tampan tick, and it lives in the sand, and so you find it in the Northern Cape and in Namibia and here. And it's managed to, the way it lives is in the sand, in the shade, the shadow area of a tree. It's just underneath the surface, and it lives there, can live there for years without feeding, and what it does is it sucks blood from animals that stand in the shade of the tree. Most trees in this part here are infected with these animals. They're an absolute plague. They're very difficult to get rid of. Of course, they carry disease like any other ticks, and they're really unpleasant. I've got a couple here, and you might like to see these. We were standing here, 10 or 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and without any effort, we were able to pick up these chaps. And I'm just going to spill them out on here. Not quite sure whether we're going to be able to see them. They're quite repulsive, I have to tell you. There's a little chap here. This one's quite rotund. He's very fast at the moment, and the reason he's rotund is that he's had quite a lot of my blood, and it was him sucking away that alerted me to the fact that we were surrounded by these little chaps. One there, one going off at great speed here. There are several quite large ones. Here's a large one pretending to be dead. There's two large ones. They're not going to win any prizes in a beauty competition, I can tell you that. Very hard outside. Live deep underneath the sand to avoid the heat of the day, about 50 centimeters down. What brings them to the surface? Well, some work has been done, and I've understood that it's the gases that we exude, CO2 among others. But I'm sure that smell is something. I'm sure that pressure is something. But within 10 minutes of standing underneath a tree, cows, cattle, goats, sheep will draw these things to surface. They'll climb up their legs and they'll attach themselves and start sucking blood. And they have an unusual skill in that the moment the animal starts moving out of the shade, they drop. They let go and drop onto the ground. And if you think of it, if they don't do that, they're going to get left out in the hot sun and they're going to die.
Even if they've taken a bite?
Even if they've taken a bite. I remember once in Ngami land lying down at the foot of a tree, and I dozed off to sleep. I was just lying down on the ground. It wasn't particularly sandy, but it was in a cattle area. And I dozed off, and I woke up with a sort of tickling sensation on my body. I looked at my arm and I saw 2 or 3 ticks standing on my arm. So in horror, I jumped up, and I can remember to this day a cascade of tampan ticks falling off me. There must have been 20 or 30 of them. Quite big chaps. It was a repulsive experience. But they are dangerous, as I say. They carry diseases. But more than that, there is a case on record where a sick cow stood in the shade of the tree and they completely absorbed all its blood. It died because of a lack of blood. That's a well-recorded case, 1936, somewhere in the Northern Cape. So they're pretty unpleasant creatures. And the moral is, don't camp underneath a tree. Someone is climbing up my leg right at this very moment. There he is. Oh, he's quite a big chap. Look at him. There we are. So you can feel them walking up your leg. So be very, very careful about camping underneath trees like this. You've got to do it where there are no sheep or goats, and that means not in a settlement or near a settlement.
Our route takes us back north now. Mike is taking us towards the Great Makarikari salt pans, and on the way to the remnants of what he calls the super lake that once covered almost all of Botswana.
We're standing on the side of the main road from Saroe to Arapa. We're just a few kilometers north of the village of Padje. And this is a place of interest to me. I find it fascinating because from here we can see 250 million years of the Earth's history. Let me point it out to you. Way down in the distance over there is the Limpopo River. And so we are looking down into the Limpopo Valley. And on the edge of the Limpopo River, in many places, there's a greeny grey rock called andesite. And where it's exposed, you'll find it planed absolutely smooth, often with grooves in it, where boulders were sitting on it, and ice compressed them down onto the surface and forced them along, gouging these marks. And that is evidence of a time when great glaciers covered the whole of this southern part of Africa and planed much of it smoothed. And we know that that happened 250 million years ago. We also know that that's the modern surface, so we can say between over there and down there lie 250 million years of history. And indeed, as you come up, were you to look at have the time to look at the sides of the hill, you would see the geological sequences piled on top of one another. And right now where we're standing on basalt, and this particular piece of basalt was probably laid down somewhere between 120 and 90 million years ago. And on top of this, the Kalahari sands accumulated right up until the present day. And if we turn around and look towards Arapa, we can just see the road going over the high ground in front of us, and that marks the exact edge of the Kalahari. And in fact, it's difficult to see now because the color's not great, but the bank on the left-hand side of that road is a red sand dune made up of Kalahari sand. So here we're standing at sort of kind of not a halfway point, but we're standing along the history, the geological history of this valley and the geological history of the Kalahari Desert, which starts just up there.
At last we near the great Makadikadi salt pans. It always astonishes me what this arid landscape dishes up.
This dry, arid landscape always brings surprises. And this particular surprise that has been sprung is a spring in a village called Mosu, in the southern part of Sao Pan. And what gives it away are the palm trees. This is the reason why there are palm trees here. This is the seed nut, the vegetable ivory of the Haifini palm that grow in huge numbers in the Okavango. And for one of these to germinate, generally speaking, it has to go through the gut of an elephant. And this used to be teeming with elephants. And the outside there has been eaten off, probably by a local child, because that is actually quite sweet to eat. This is obviously a spring.
Yes, it is. It's probably, I think it is, the biggest remaining spring of all the springs that used to flow out along the base of the escarpment behind us. And what I always think is absolutely amazing is the number of palm trees, vegetable ivory palm trees that are around here. And to think that probably no more than 50 or 60 or 70 years ago, herds of elephant would come down here, right down across the pans, having eaten vegetable ivory elsewhere, leaving the fruit here, those fruit taken, they grow. And just to imagine in this incredibly hot, arid environment, this pool of water and what it must have been like all those years ago to see 40, 50 or 100 elephants around here, an extraordinary sight. And of course they never, they do actually come down here, very, very seldom, one or two perhaps. But it's very much something of the past, and what a sight it must have been.
And the reason for this wall would be to protect the wall from cattle?
Yeah, this was put here by the museum as part of a project to preserve the whole of this area, and yet the water is available for the villagers to use.
Separating the main roads near Mosu from the giant pans of the Makadikadi are rough tracks through Mapani scrub. Driving through Mapani can pose dangers to the vehicles.
So much of Botswana, particularly in the north, is made up of these beautiful Mapani forests. Now, Mapani is nice and not so nice. What's nice about it is it makes beautiful firewood. What's not so nice about it is when the trees die, they often leave things like this. If you drive over one of these, even a small one, it will go straight through your tire. There's no hope of you getting over without tire damage. So when driving through these Mapani forests, really keep your eyes open for this. And often the paths through Mapani forests are very vague. And that's where the danger lies. You might be moving around a tree that's fallen over. Here's another one. This is quite big. It's very obvious. It's unlikely that you're going to drive over something like this, but sometimes they're very small, but they're enough to go through a tire. And the biggest danger lies when you're traveling along a track and you see a tree that has fallen over and there is now a vague track around it. That is the biggest danger. These lie in wait.
Having risked our tyres through miles and miles of Mapani scrub, we climb an escarpment to the southwest of Mosu. Here Mike delivers another surprise.
So this is where you would come up the hill, this is where you would approach this really important site. And what's important about it is that this is what is known as a Kami period site. You had the state of Great Zimbabwe from 1250 to 1450, and then it collapsed dramatically, suddenly, bang, almost overnight. And its place was taken by two other major states. One is Monomotapa in the north on the Zambezi or near the Zambezi, and the other was the Kami state. Same stone technology, but much finer, much more intricate buildings, a distinctively different style, and it lasted from about 1450 right through until the Matabele came in 1832. It was visited by the Portuguese, it was an immensely successful state, and this is its most southerly and most westerly outpost, and we can tell that from the design. Let's go and have a look at it. This is where you would be met. It's just a low stone wall to indicate to people that you're approaching a place of importance. This wall is a statement about where you are. And if you were able to satisfy the keeper of the gate, let's call him that for want of a better phrase, that your business was legitimate and you had a good reason to be here, you would probably pass through that gap and you would approach this very imposing structure behind us. Let's go and have a look at it.
Does it have a name?
Curiously, it does. The local people call it Karmas. It's a reference to the early Karma family who were refugees for a short period of time, Karma the Great, and he came down with his followers to settle in this area. But he didn't settle here. We found the place where he settled. But over the decades, people have got mixed up, and now this is known locally as Karmas. But in fact, it is a Karmi site, and that predates Karma by 400 years. Although this one is probably more recent, who can say? It's probably 16th, 17th century, but that's a guess. See the deliberate placing of the white stones in the wall there?
What would that signify? Why deliberately white?
The significance of the color we don't know, but it is deliberate to try and give a pattern. Some of the Kami walls that you see in around Bulawayo, for example, are works of art. They're stunning walls, brilliantly placed rocks, wonderful craftsmanship, dry stone walling, and this is an attempt to emulate it. It's not as good, but it's pretty significant, and it's in this extraordinary location. Here we are, the southwest corner of Soapan, one of the most remote outposts of the Kami Empire. And if we go around here, you see there's no wall, it's not a house. There's a lot of speculation as to whether it was actually roofed or not. It might have had poles and thatching, but that's pure guesswork.
Absolutely amazing.
It is, isn't it? It's absolutely
Find
incredible.
this here, of all places.
Yes, of all places. That's exactly it. It's so remote.
On to the great Makadikadi we go. We take a shortcut along one of the hundreds of cut lines that divide the Kalahari.
Access to some of Botswana's secret places is via the cut lines. A cut line is basically a track through the bush. Generally speaking, they're dead straight. Often, like this one, they follow cattle fence. And cattle fences divide the Kalahari, certainly the Botswana part of the Kalahari, in sections to protect the cattle grazing areas from the spread of foot and mouth disease. And if you can get onto these cut lines, you can follow and travel through very, very remote parts of the Kalahari. Following a cut line means that you will discover places that not too many people visit very often. And the trouble is that not many maps have the cut lines drawn on them. So when buying a map, go and find one with the cut lines.
The Makadikadi pans are amongst the largest, flattest places on the whole Earth and can be easily seen from outer space.
This is our first sight of Sawa, as you...
Yeah, this is the place where, for me, the magic of Makadikadi begins.
Yes.
Because as you just come out of the village, and this is the first sight you get of this incredible feature, and it's the first time you begin to understand how enormous the old lake was. That's Soapan that we're looking at now, but you have to understand that where we're standing now is about 949 meters above sea level, but the old lake, the highest level of the old lake, was 945 meters above sea level.
This is the super lake that covered
the whole of northern Botswana. It goes from here all the way to Kasane, all the way past Maun, a third of the delta, the whole of Naipan, the whole of Savuti, the whole of Mababi Depression. You'd have stood here when the lake was at its greatest extent, and you'd have seen nothing out there but water. Absolutely nothing at all. And just a few meters away, there's a relic, an ancient shoreline where waves rolled up and smashed on the shore and and made a beach of pebbles, and they're all rounded. Let's go down and have a look at it. Yeah, it's not very far away. See how they're all rounded?
Yes.
So this was a beach. This was where the waves came in, and they have a fetch of 150 kilometers. They become pounding in here, great big swell smashing on the shore, and then moving these pebbles. Look at them, hundreds of them, all rounded, beautiful, and different stones, all different kinds. It must have been an extraordinary place. Look at this.
No, these are beach stones.
Yeah, these are all beach stones, exactly.
Yeah. Look at them, so typical beach stones.
Yeah. And just imagine being here and hearing the sound of the surf rolling all the pebbles. Like a pebble beach. Whoops. And it's so dry and dusty. It's just such an inhospitable place right now.
Yeah.
And yet we're standing on the shore of a vast, vast sea.
There are layers going down. I noticed
Yes, different, exactly.
There are in fact layers.
There are different shorelines because when the lake dried out, it dried out as big rivers were captured elsewhere. And so it would stay at this level for a long, long time, then it would drop and stay there for a long, long time, then it would drop again and once more cut a new shoreline. And as it gets smaller and smaller, rain was able to raise and lower the level. So there are a whole series of little shorelines.
So as we go down, we actually should cross a series of other...
Like going off steps is exactly what you will do.
Watch out for that.
Yeah.
Our convoy reaches Sour Pan, the remnant of the bed of the super lake. Driving on the pans is treacherous. Thick black mud lies in wait to catch our vehicles. For this evening though, we're going to take it easy, make camp and early rise to walk up the 400-foot escarpment that lies on the southern edge of Sour Pan.
We're at the southern tip of Sour Pan, and along the southern edge of the pan are some very high hills. They're much higher than anything else for quite some distance. And this is actually a national archaeological site, the top of this hill, and we're going to take a walk up there, and I believe Mike tells us that there are a few surprises to find. Having made it up the hill, it's quite a climb. If you're fit, unlike me, you probably won't find it too difficult. But down there it looks like a hill. Up here it's immediately apparent it's not a hill at all. This is an escarpment, and it drops sharply away just to the southern edge of Sour Pan. What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for, well, here's what I'm looking for. It's exactly what I was looking for. Can you see that?
This piece there?
Yeah, that round thing.
That round thing?
Yeah, that's an ostrich eggshell bead, and it's a particularly fine one. And it's very, very small, very delicate. Very well made. Pretty good, considering that was made without the use of iron, and probably 1,000 years ago.
What is that telling us about this place?
Well, this is an archaeological site, so I know that it's a village. I know that probably 1,000 people lived here. Around that number, we can't possibly tell. And we know from work that has been done here that it was occupied somewhere around 1000 AD, 1200 AD. That's 800 years ago. This is a midden, what we would call a midden. If you go to any African village today, you'll see that they keep the place scrupulously clean, and all the detritus that they sweep up gets taken to a place and thrown away outside the fence. And that, of course, accumulates over time and gets buried in time. And then we come and dig it up 1,000 years later. And every hut will have its own midden, or every collection of huts, and this is a midden. And I can tell that because, first of all, I can see this greyish colour of the soil. Secondly, there's lots of stuff here. There's
two
beads.
there.
There's another bead there.
Yeah.
There's pieces of bone here. There's a piece of bone. There's another piece of bone. There's another piece of bone. I picked up there's a lovely piece of bone. See it?
Oh, right. Yes, it is indeed.
And of course, hundreds of pieces of pottery. So here's something interesting. See this stone? What do you notice about this stone?
Round.
Exactly. And it's clearly been in water. It's been rolled and rolled and rolled in water, and it's completely smooth and rounded. And we look around here and we think to ourselves, wait a moment, we're 300 or 400 feet above the old lake.
Yes, yes.
How did this get here? This is sandstone that we're standing on, and above it was basalt, not water. This must have been brought here by people. What was it used for? Why did they bring it? Well, as it happens, even today, if you go to the remoter areas and you watch women making pots, they use rounded stones like this, or mussel shells, the local equivalent, whatever it is, to shape and smooth the inside of the pot. They put this in their fingers, and they will use a rounded stone.
Okay.
Oops, I've dropped it, because I'm not very good at making pots. And they'll use this to smooth the inside of the pot.
Is that
And so
right?
somebody 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, was using this to smooth their pots.
Amazing, isn't it?
Original entrance, as far as we can tell, it was never bricked right the way across. This is the other wall I was talking about. This flat structure we're on it's like a peninsula. It doesn't look like it from down there, it just looks like a flat escarpment, but in fact it comes out from the escarpment in a big loop, and there's a narrow neck where it joins the mainland, if you like, and this is the narrow neck. There's one end of it over here, and here's the other. And there's a wall across the narrow neck.
Wow, look at that.
Why is it here? Nobody knows. Is it defensive? Hardly. Therefore it's symbolic. Was it built here? Was it built by the first people? Was it built by later occupants? We simply don't know. But it's significant that there's a wall here with a gap in it, and there's a wall down by the baobab. And it seems that this is, from what we know from other sites, it's very likely that you would approach either from there or here, and this is where you would come in and introduce yourself and say who you were and what your business was. It's certainly not defensive.
This is obviously a wall, Mike.
Yeah?
What is this wall?
Well, we can only speculate, but it's surprising to find a wall like this in this environment. And I think the suspicion would be that this is a formal structure that marks the formal entry to this site. And down in this river, in this valley here, there's a river. It's perhaps where they drew water. There's a well-worn path up this valley, and it comes through a gap in the wall there and leads us to this point here. And I suspect that this is a formal statement. Here is an important place, and people coming here would come up through this wall, and there would well have been perhaps been a hut here, a kind of guardian who was the person that you approached. We don't know the date of this wall, but the site we know, and this could be an early example of one of the first uses of stone as a formal statement.
And where would the stone have come from?
All of this is all sandstone, it all would have come from around here somewhere. And the wall is much degraded now, but there's every reason to think that it would have been quite neat and smart and well built when it was in use. The other wall is much more impressive.
Onto Kubu Island, the only regularly visited part of Sauerpan.
Just arrived at Kubu Island, on the western side of Sawapan. Every time I come here, I am in awe of the place. It is just something extraordinary. This is a national heritage site, archaeological site, probably the only place in the Makarikari that is regularly visited by self-drive tourists. But it is an extraordinary place, and if you ever visit the Makarikari, make your way to Kubu. First thing one sees at Kubu is this great wall. It's obviously a wall,
Yeah.
and it's in a semicircle.
Yeah. This stone wall structure in front of us is what is often called the lost city. It is neither a city nor is it lost, but it is a really interesting structure.
Right.
It's about 200 meters long, and it's really fairly mysterious because in fact we don't know a great deal about it. We know that it's post-Great Zimbabwe. That means it was built after 1450. Informed opinion puts it around 1600, 1650, but that's a guess. One might expect that people were living inside this wall. There are very clearly defined entrances. There are loopholes, holes in the wall, very typical of similar structures in Zimbabwe. But the curious thing is there's not a trace of inhabitation inside this wall. There's no pottery, there are no beads, there's nothing to say that people lived in here. In fact, there's everything to say that people never lived in here. And that raises the question, what was it all about?
And is it significant that it goes from one shore to the other? Is it a barrier of some kind?
It could well be a barrier. We can only speculate. We don't really know. But it's not an accident that it goes from one shore to the other. That's for certain. So it's enclosing a portion of the island.
You're saying that the people wouldn't dwell here, but they'd obviously use it for something.
They would have used it for
Is
something.
there no indication of what they might have used it for?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that because there is an indication, and again, informed opinion takes the evidence that perhaps I can show you a little later and puts it together with this structure and comes up with a really interesting explanation for this that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. A possible clue to the use of that enclosed area, that walled area that we've just seen, is right here. So let's go and have a look at that. There are curious features like this stone can in front of you. See this rounded shape here? There's another one over there. There's another one over there. And they're completely mysterious. People at first thought they might have been graves, but the museum has excavated two of them and there is nothing underneath them. And the possibility exists, and we can only speculate on this, but the possibility exists that many African tribes have initiation ceremonies, and in some parts of Africa, those initiation ceremonies, which might take place every 2 or 3 years and mop up, if you like, all the youngsters of suitable age, 16, 17, 18, down to perhaps 15, and they would go to a place that is remote. They would have their initiation ceremony, and some tribes mark that ceremony with a cairn of rocks. We don't know if that's the case here, but it's a very likely explanation, especially when you think of the fact that there are nearly 200 cairns like this on Kubu Island. That's a lot of them. And it puts into perspective a possible use of the ruins that we saw earlier on. Remember, there's no sign of anybody living in that area, although there are other sites on this island where people clearly did live, at a different time span. But there's no pottery in there, there's no hut bases, there's nothing to suggest people lived there. So what was it used for? And the implication is that it might have been the place where initiation ceremonies were held, and that these cairns, these 200 odd cairns that litter this island, you can see them extending all the way up the hill slope and over the other side, they in some way mark or commemorate those ceremonies.
We walked into this. It's obviously an enclosure overlooking the pans, and this is where you found the evidence of human habitation.
Yeah, there's evidence on the way up here, and there's evidence here. There's pottery and eggshell beads, but the most significant thing in where we are now is this rock and this pottery, which was here when we got here. And what it tells me is that it just underlines for me the time dimension of this island. It doesn't exist for a moment when you arrive here as a tourist and you look at it and you leave. It's part of the culture of the people. It has been for not just generations but for thousands of years. And what this is saying, this is where the local people are trying to make contact with their ancestors, and through the medium of pottery, which they know is used by people who were here before them. So through this, sometimes through eggshell beads, which they will put in here as well, and as a measure of their sincerity and earnestness, they will often put down a few of the local coins. And when you consider how poor these people are, for them to leave a 1 pula coin here or 25 tebe coin here is a measure of how really important it is to them.
So this rock is used today, what it was used for 1,000 years ago when this place was inhabited.
Can't say that it was can't say that it was used for this purpose 1,000 years ago, but we can say that modern people see the evidence of settlement, see the pottery lying around, know that this place has a huge time depth of occupation, and see it as a way of communicating with their ancestors.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep, absolutely.
And when you look at the setting, it's and you think about this island as a whole, and the cairns that we've seen and the stone wall site that we've seen, you begin to understand this is not just an isolated pretty island. This is a really important place, and it has a time depth of occupation which is enormous. It goes right back for as long as man has been in Africa.
We're now on the summit of Kubu.
Well, we're standing about 20 meters above sea level, about 11 meters above the surrounding pan. And what the story is here is these smooth granite rocks tell us that at one stage this place exactly where we're standing was a tiny little islet emerging from this vast sea, and that around them waves were crashing onto these rocks, waves that started 140 kilometers away and had a long fetch and were probably quite big, and they crashed onto the rocks here, surged around it, and would have moved any material that was movable up and down, creating a pebble beach. And in fact, just behind me here on the ground down here, there are thousands of rounded stones that are clear evidence of a pebble beach that marked like a tonsure, a circle around this single rock. And had you stood here when the lake was present, except for the escarpment that you can see in the background, apart from that, you would have seen nothing but water in every direction that you know. It would have been extraordinary to be here at that time.
How long ago would that have been?
Hard to say. Thousands of years for certain. Certainly probably more than 10,000 years. But it was a very big sea. At its biggest extent, this lake, would have covered 120,000 square kilometers. Whole of northern Botswana, Okavango, Savuti, parts of the Chobe, all underwater. And this little tiny islet here, you and I would have been standing here saying it's a bit cold and we're getting wet from the spray, but gosh, it's beautiful.
Right, what we're going to do now is something a little bit risky. Due south from Kubu are two islands. They're called South Islands. It's 10 kilometers across open pan. Mike reckons it'll be fine. Personally, I'm a little bit nervous, but we're going to do it anyway. See you on South Island. So it's goodbye, Kubu. We will see you again sometime in South Island. See it ahead. This actually looks quite scary. It's a very, very big piece of pan. But Mike is very experienced in these pans, probably more experienced than anybody. So there we go. There we go, into the wild blue yonder. Straddling these tracks, it actually looks quite firm. How far are we across? Not quite halfway. The steering becomes so sensitive. Keeping the steering wheel dead straight. Not sinking in much. About halfway now. Look at that.
You know what she's doing?
What
he's doing?
With
They've got a nest up here.
Yeah.
One of them has gone off that way, and that one is pretending to have a broken wing and getting us to follow her because, or him, it's a hack, because they think that we're predators and we're after something to eat. So that he's trying to distract us and make us follow him and take us away from the nest, which is in here somewhere. That's quite something to see that.
This is typical driving in the Makarikari. Absolutely beautiful. You go across the pan, it's all hunky-dory, and suddenly the vehicle gets sucked in. And this is what happens. The mud is very sticky and it sticks absolutely everywhere. Look at this here. It's been forced. See, look at this. Unbelievable. Now that piece that I drove through now was probably less than 100 meters, probably 50 meters. And during that time, when you hit it, you can't turn the steering wheel. You have to keep the steering wheel absolutely straight. The vehicle will not turn. And even if you turn it slightly, you can feel the power being absorbed and the vehicle wants to slow down. So keep it in a low gear. And when that happens, open the throttle and keep clear. Get out of the soft patch. It's really the only way of apart from avoiding it completely, getting out of it. The other thing to consider, if you're lucky enough to be driving with another vehicle, don't drive in that vehicle's tracks, but straddle them. You'll be able to read the thickness of the mud, if there is any, by the vehicle in front of you's tracks. The other thing is that if you want to cross to an island or something like that, and you actually do have to cross a section of pan, look out for cattle tracks. The cows here seem to have a sixth sense about what is soft and what isn't. And if you see cattle tracks, even if they're fairly old, there's a reasonable chance that that is the safest way across. We are now being blinded by the dust, because
Mike's gone right.
while there was the wind, it seems to it's blowing in our faces. That's the thing.
Tell me that is not incredible colours. Look at that. What do you think?
We made it! We made it. There were 1 or 2 patches that...
Did I throw up any mud?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, but Andrew threw up in the car.
Oh, look at this place.
Look at the colours. Look at the colours here. And this combination of gold and brown and black is just incredible. What we're seeing here, this dark blue band just above the horizon, and it's got pink above it. That is the shadow of our Earth on our atmosphere. It's the shadow of planet Earth. The sun's setting down in the west, and as it goes down, so the Earth gets thrown into it goes into darkness, and the sun throws a shadow beyond the Earth, and that's it. And if you watch it carefully, you will see it gradually rising up across the sky until finally it's completely night. It's not often that you can see it that clearly. It's rather a nice picture.